Well, hello all on this Memorial Day 2020. Hope that everybody is doing okay. I know I promised people a canoe ride up the Mullica. Well, I'm not on the Mullica. I am up near my home in Red Bank on the Navesink River, which is outside of the Pine Barrens. And I figured that as long as I am up here, I'll give you guys a little bit of an ecology lesson on marsh ecosystems. The Navesink is much like the Mullica, up about 8 miles, or I think it's a little bit more like 11 miles. It's an intertidal system, and it's regular. So we're experiencing tides all the way up here. I can actually tell because my kayak is floating backwards. Now, I'm not on the Navesink River proper right now, as you might tell. If you know the Navesink River, it's quite a large river. It's much more expansive, and we'll go out into the larger Navesink River. It's a little bit of an offshoot, and if you were to study ecology, oh, it looks like we've got somebody on. Welcome to whoever just signed on. So we're on the Navesink River, like I said earlier. We're on the Navesink River, and we're on a little bit of an offshoot to it. And if you study ecology, especially freshwater and intertidal and coastal ecology, you know that this little offshoot right here is really where things begin. Like, this is where life is, the parts of the river where nobody goes into. This is, I guess you would really consider this to be a marsh. The soil around here is extremely humid. Our connection is not the greatest, and so it's going to be glitchy. But you can see that you can see that it is absolutely, the Phragmites is towering up, and the reason why is because here. And the reason why there's so much organic material here is because tides bring in all of that organic material, bring it up the river and deposit it upstream. And at the same time, you have stuff flowing downstream and depositing it into this intertidal system. And this is one of these intertidal systems so incredibly important, are so incredibly important to conserve and maintain, is because they are so incredibly nutrient rich, and they host an enormous number of species. All of these plants are growing simply because nutrients are getting dumped into this system. Now, I love to take my classes to a system like this, especially in freshwater ecology, because we are so used to humans being everywhere, but I guarantee you that there is no human that sets foot inside of this really thick bush of Phragmites. It is dense. It'll cut you up. There are organisms that spend their entire life in just a small fragment of this Phragmites. Excuse the pun, fragment, Phragmites. Get it? Anyways, there's an incredible amount of diversity in life that's in here. Now, another thing to note, if you've ever gone kayaking up any river, especially an intertidal river, there's a lot of dead fish. So we're gonna try to move back a little bit. You can see that there's a whole lot of what we call detritus or small leaf particles, but there's a fish right there. You can see it glaring out. Sorry, the camera's not polarized. So there's some dead fish. There's leaves. There's a whole bunch of crabs that specialize on dead fish. You can actually see a dead fish up there. There's another dead fish right there. You can see all kinds of stuff. And oh, there's one right there. A lovely dead fish. I know it looks gross. No, it's probably not really a fish, but probably the most abundant species here. These menhaden, these fish, they come and they decompose. They are depositing even more nutrients. And I want you just to, I know it's gross, but just think about this fish in a slightly different way than you're used to. This fish is made up of atoms from the ocean. And this fish swam up the river and deposited those oceanic nutrients up here. At the same time, the ocean gets all of its nutrients from land. And so this fish is actually composed of nutrients that ran off from land during some rain event and then made up, flowed down into the ocean, made themselves into a fish, and then this fish took that sack of nutrients in the form of a fish and brought it back upstream. And there it dies and it decomposes, and I know it doesn't look pretty, and I know it certainly doesn't smell good, but that rotting smell of decomposition is really the smell of life coming back to this wetland. And it's a good thing. Things need to decompose. All right. So I am doing my best on this holiday weekend to get away from people thing. It really frustrates me to no end to see how many people are out and about and not social distancing. If we are going to kick this virus in the butt, people at least need to be not stupid about it and recognize that it is an actual problem. So I'm trying to do my best to get away from people here. And unfortunately, people are not doing with. Oh, it's higher. That's lovely. Now, I will say that most of what I'm seeing here in terms of plant life is all Phragmites. And Phragmites, as you might know or might not know, is invasive. But this is a reason about invasion and what it means to be invasive. All right, invasive does not mean bad. Invasive just means that it's not supposed to be here. All right? But look, we aren't supposed to be here either. All right? So we are invasive. And if we are going to be completely true to our conservation means here, we should get rid of ourselves. And we're not doing that. Right? We're not getting rid of ourselves because we pick and choose the invasive creatures to get rid of. All right, so while Phragmites is invasive, it is growing really, really well, and it's doing what plants do best, which is sucking up nutrients that are on the ground, and it puts those nutrients back. Now, is it problematic for species in the system? Absolutely. There's a lot of organisms that don't like Phragmites. They would prefer to have their native species around. Yes, absolutely, but there's a whole lot of organisms that would prefer if we weren't around either. So take that into your philosophical tool bag and just be less likely to, maybe not convince yourself that all species do what they're supposed to do. They're not heinous, they're not sinister, they're just there. Would this world look different if there weren't invasive species? Yes, absolutely. But it would look different no matter what. All right? So I'm trying to backtrack this up out of the Navesink River. It's not the easiest to do because this is pretty shallow. So I'm gonna put this camera down and pin it on me here. Hi guys, how you doing? Oh, can't rotate my device. For some reason, it's putting a fedora on me. That's awesome. Check that out. Hey, I like that. Maybe I should get a fedora. Don't even know why I did that. All right, so let's see if I can't somehow manage this. Nope. Alright guys, I'm going to have to bear with a little bit of shakiness for a second here while I backtrack myself out with one hand because I am amazing. Thanks to those of you who are joining in. I was just going to do this on my own here. If you guys have any questions about tidal or coastal ecology, just put them into the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer them. Unless we got some 6 people on. That's great. All right. So, you know what? Let me put the phone down, guys. Let me just put it right here for a second while I try to meander my way out. Now, I think that the tide is going out. If I were responsible, I would check the tide schedules, but I'm not a responsible person. No, just kidding, I am to some extent. There we go. All right, guys, so, hi. Oh, really, I gotta get a fedora. That's awesome. All right, so let's get ourselves back onto the Navesink River here. So I'm in my, what is it, a 14 Cabela, not Cabela's, Dick's Sporting Goods when they were having their boat sale. Really kind of a nice buy, I think. Cheap. If you want to get yourself into kayaking, by all means, do it. It's not a dangerous sport by any means, especially if you start off slow in lakes and you don't do anything in wind, because wind makes it much harder to paddle. But look, guys, if you're going to go out onto the river, wear life vests. I'm not saying that just because that's what you're supposed to do. I'm saying that from experience. Life vests are really important. I know that they're not always comfortable. Here's the thing. I know that everybody can swim, or most people can swim, and that if you fall overboard in most systems, you can just stand up. I get it, right? No problem. However, that's not the issue. The issue is that when you accidentally tip overboard, you lose your phone, and you lose your and you lose all the things you're supposed to take, and the result, you panic and you start looking for those things, and then you get your feet stuck in the mud, and then you start moving your feet around in the mud. And if you've ever moved your feet around in mud, you know that mud is very sticky and it'll suck you in like quicksand. And that's when you start panicking even more, and that's when you need your life vest, because look, it's not going to kill you if you fall overboard. What is going to kill you is the panic that you induce upon yourself. So, especially if you've never fallen overboard before, which I have to admit I have. You've never fallen overboard before, wear a life vest, just because you don't know how your body's going to react. Alright, guys, so thanks to those of you who are signing on. I truly appreciate it. I didn't expect anybody to sign on. We are on the Navesink River up near Red Bank, not in the Pine Barrens. I know I promised a ride up the Mullica, but to be honest with you, I didn't feel like driving down the Mullica right now, and I live up in Red Bank. Yeah, I make the hour commute to Stockton every single day. But I do it because north the compromise. But so I'm up here in the Navesink River trying to get away from people on this nice holiday weekend. And the Navesink River is intertidal. It's intertidal for a good ways, and it would go even further, except they dammed it up at the Swimming River Reservoir. They dammed it up quite some time ago. And actually, the Swimming River Reservoir is now off limits to the public. Because I unfortunately go Navesink by permission of the wastewater treatment company, the American Water, to sample for microplastics, and it was a beautiful system, really gorgeous. We went 5 miles up that Swimming River Reservoir, and it is pristine. So, guys, I am paddling with one hand here. And for those of you that know, it is not that easy, and because we're doing drift, we're going to have to paddle against the tide. But yeah, so as I was talking about before, all of these plants around here are really important. They're sucking up nutrients that are being delivered to the system from upstream, and then with the tide coming in, all of the nutrients are coming upstream as well, and the plants are taking them up. And if anybody is a birder who's watching, let's talk a little bit about birds along the shoreline. So I've been seeing some great birds today. I haven't seen an osprey yet, however, I know that they're here. I saw a few grab a fish, and I hope I can see one. Lots of ducks, lots of terns, whole bunch of seagulls and everything. And I just want to think for a second, ecologically, what are those organisms doing? Now those organisms are important not just because they're pretty, but because they are taking nutrients. They're taking fish from the shoreline. Welcome to this on this beautiful Monday. So they are these shorebirds are taking nutrients from the water. All right, they're stealing fish from the water and putting those fish back onto land. No, they're not grabbing them and gently putting those fish back down there. They're eating the fish, then they're flying to land. And when they fly to land, they poop those fish out. And so those fish that were once swimming in this water are being stolen from the water by birds, flown to land inside, and then a plant grows on land. All because of those birds, those ever important shorebirds that eat birds during the day and then fly to land at night, sit in their nest or their roost or whatever, and poop those birds out. And you know what? Some plants even rely on bird poop to get those nutrients. Some plants like having birds nest on their branches because it means that during the night the birds poop out all of that shit. Poop out all of that poop, all of that overfish, and the plant benefits and grows. So, we're just drifting along. I think we're mid-tide, it looks like. Sounds like we got somebody coming up behind us. Not a fan. I would like all 12 miles of the Navesink River to myself. Just heard a fish jump. I tell you what, these menhaden, they're something else. Oh, tide now, that is. So I am paddling against the tide here. Check out all of that green stuff, right? All of that green stuff is what we call filamentous algae. It's not bad. It's good growth, and lots of animals and plants can live in them. Scud, as they're commonly called, can live inside of those algal mats. So this isn't bad. It does appear gross, but it's not. It's just algae, and it's good. It's good for the plants. Now you can also see that this algae is it is collecting leaves that fell into the lake. All right. It's collecting leaves, and that's also an important thing. You have these things called debris dams here. You see all this stuff, these twigs and logs that fell into the river. I'm coming up on one right now. These twigs and logs. These are called debris dams, and what they do is they hold plants that fell into the water. They hold leaves and they hold detritus, all of that dead stuff. They hold that stuff in the water, and then that stuff slowly decomposes, but is also a home to small organisms. And imagine that you are a tiny little insect or crustacean that lives in the Navesink River, and you don't want to drift downstream. How are you going to do that? How are you going to fight that current all day long? Well, the answer is you don't. You find one of those nice little debris dams to live in. And it's not permanent, but it's permanent enough that it lasts for your life cycle, because let's face it, you're not going to live that long. You're not a fish. That is one. Oh, we're seeing a lot of fish jump. That is one of the reasons why it is so important to maintain a healthy shoreline along these intertides. Do not harden them up. Do not put concrete and cement there, because if you do, all of those tiny organisms that you can't see that form the base of the food web won't have anywhere to lodge and hang out. When you see a fallen log on a river, that is one of the most important things for that river ecosystem. So incredibly important, because it forms a habitat for a whole bunch of organisms. that don't want to drift downstream, because if they drift downstream, they're going to die, either because they lose the energy or they get eaten by a fish. So it's a great, what we call, refuge. Alright guys, I have to detach my kayak paddle here, because if I'm going to paddle one-handed, I can't do it with a double-ended kayak. So let's switch back to me. Man, there's my fedora again. I really got to get a fedora. That's a great thing. Okay. Alright guys, we're back on my super sexy life jacket and my fedora that this thing keeps on putting on me. It's also putting sunglasses on me, even though I have sunglasses on me. Making me a blues brother. Now look, I'm gonna rant for just a second, because, you know, what else is this good for? Why do people insist on blasting music when they're kayaking? God, can't you just listen to the birds? I get it. You're bored. So then go home and blast music. Man, we got 9 people watching. Never would have thought. Give a shout out. Whoever you are that is watching, give a shout out. Alright, you don't want to see my pretty face. There we go. There's the Navesink. I hear a motor behind me. Now I have to say, while we have a motor coming up, now I know that some people love motoring up these up a river like this. It's shallow. And when you motor up a river like this, you are really going to disturb the bottom of this river. And it's not good. I know that we can, because the motors have gotten better and better. Not good. Coming up to my left. Yeah. I have to say, I don't mind the wake. That's not what bothers me, because I like the rocking action. But the problem is, and this is not just me ranting, this is actual research. The problem is that those jet skis, unfortunately, they don't have a propeller. What happens is these can take people into really shallow areas where there was never a motor ever before in history. When those jet skis go into those shallow areas, I know it's fun, but the motor noise, one, distracts organisms, and also the rush of water out of the propeller really can screw up organisms and their habitat. And so I strongly encourage people not to take jet skis into shallow water. I know they're so much fun, but keep them in the open water. I've been on before. They are last. I love going as fast as possible and jumping wakes. However, really not sustainable when you're in shallow systems like the Navesink. Now, fortunately, these guys were in the middle of the river, so that's okay because it's deepest in the middle. But honestly, just keep it out. And they're going even further upstream where I know it gets even shallower, which is not good. And I know they had to pass through a really narrow part of this river too, which probably screwed things up. Now, I have to say, Navesink River is probably for humans. Although I've been walking along the Navesink River for this entire quarantine time, and it's amazing to see how many shorebirds are loving the lack of humans. I went kayaking once during the height of quarantine. I know I shouldn't have, but I really needed to get out of the house, and I tried to make sure I wasn't around anybody. And I gotta tell you, there were so many fish jumping all over the place, and all the birds. Now, admittedly, it was earlier season, and that's when that normally happens. But it was really pretty. Let's turn around. Welcome to all of those who are joining in with me. If you've hung out, maybe you're just using me as background noise while you have a barbecue. Hope that people are enjoying their holiday weekend. It is really a beautiful, beautiful day. One thing that we could talk about here is fish jump. Is why are there trees on the right-hand side and there's Phragmites grass on the left-hand side? All right. Now, I gotta say, if you take an ecology class with me, I ask a lot of stupid questions. Stupid questions are where the interesting things lie. Right? It's just, why is it like this? Why does it have to be like this? I'm like a 2-year-old kid a 3-year-old kid, I guess, that never stopped asking why. And that's what science is all about. That's why I love science, is because I never had to stop asking that. And you all are like, well, why, Aaron? Why? Okay, well, let's look at which way the river is flowing. Right? Let's look at where the river is meandering. Right? That way, right? And that's a really important trick to understanding why there's grass over there and trees over here. As the river flowed, it went straight into this rock area over here, and it hit that rock area, and instead of flowing straight, it meandered around. All right? And it is fastest here, and it is slowest on the other bank. That's fish jump. It is slowest on the other bank, and that's what rivers do. They go fast around the outer edge and slower around the inner edge. This is called a classic meander. And what is going on is that the river is slowly eroding away this side, and it's depositing a whole bunch of nutrients on that side. So what's going on is the grass is growing there because it's a floodplain. When the river rises up for the tide, water flows there because that's the side that it's been depositing sediment on for centuries and centuries, and on this side it's been slowly eating away, and you can even see all the boulders and everything, and also the tires. Oh, please don't throw away your tires. Now, we are also seeing another invasive species here. My volume keeps cutting out. Yes, Mary Beth, I know, it's a problem with my phone. Fortunately, the 4G signal isn't great. If I was working off of Wi-Fi, it would be much better. I apologize. But the video will be online, and you'll be able to hear it later on. We're seeing some Japanese knotweed here. Now, Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed is known to be this particularly heinous invasive species because... Wait for the plane to pass. There we go. Is known to be this particularly heinous invasive species because it grows around here. Now, if you heard me rant earlier, an invasive species is not bad. An invasive species has this bad connotation because we call it invasive species, but it was our choice to call it an invasive species. Invasive species are just plants. This is not being bad or bad. It is, we brought it there by accident. All right? I think we brought it here by accident. It's invasive, but it's stabilizing the bank. It's doing plants by the organism. It's just not supposed to be here, and we brought it naturally, and so we tend to think of it as bad, but it's not bad. I don't know why we go to such great lengths to get rid of it. There's no real good reason for it to be gone. Now, I've actually heard that you can make wine. There's a company that makes wine out of the Japanese knotweed tips. We have another debris dam right here. Now, I am moving into an area where there's less of a connection, and it looks like we are losing some listeners, so I think I'm going to cut this live stream short today. Anyways, thank you for those of you who are joining in. I really appreciate it. And join me this Friday when we go look at the Pine Barrens tree frog. See if we can find some hot spots for where it might be on campus. All right, thank you for joining in, and I hope to see you later.